Hey everybody, I'm Tim and today I'm here to turn your dream into a nightmare. And you're watching Cigars Daily. Hey, get more out of all our videos and especially this one when you join the community on Cigars Daily Plus and now on Rumble. And for this video, I chose the American Viking Cigars Filthy Viking, a cigar that I love like one of my children. And I say that for those of you who have children and know that you love your children, but they're not necessarily always a perfect delight. And that's part of the story I intend to tell you today. If I've heard this once, I've heard it 1,000 times. People come, they try a cigar, they experience craftsmanship, the profile, the experience that comes with a handcrafted blend, and naturally lend themselves to, I should craft my own cigar. I want to launch my own cigar brand. It's an age-old story. Hell, it's the same thing that happened to me. Before I was ever in the world of cigars, I would roll my own cigars. Terribly rolled cigars with garbage rag tobacco that I got for myself somewhere. And it was a passion of mine. I really had the brand thing in mind. I'd even print little labels off on my printer and tape them onto my cigars. It was so cute of me to do. And I had no idea what I was trying to sign up for. And now, 10 years later, I know a lot more about this topic. And so if this has gone through your mind before, I want to give you like the fair picture of what this is like. And I'm going to answer this up front for you, but I'll ask you to comment. Has this notion popped into your head? Have you gone down this road before? Do you have like plans on the old bucket list to say, start a cigar brand? Drop it down below. Let me know what you think. If you've attempted it before, you'll likely know a little bit of what I'm talking about, but I don't recommend this. I don't recommend it very much at all. This is something that is unanimously, exceedingly difficult for a number of different reasons, and that's what I want to take you through in this video. Like starting a new cigar brand for a lot of guys seems like this like lofty goal of doing something really passion inspired in their life. What it's really like is running into a girl that looks like she's about a 10, but she's got platinum dyed hair and a tramp stamp and priors. This one comes with some red flags, and a lot of guys want to ignore these red flags and run right into this idea of starting a cigar brand, and dear God, here's what you're thinking about doing, so buckle up, you're in for a ride. The reality is, when it comes to blending and branding and crafting everything that comes with a cigar brand, or even just the blend, you don't know what you don't know. And the first thing that you don't know is really how the cigar industry works. You may have heard some of this before, but one of the most important questions that cigar makers get asked is, are you vertically integrated? And that's an important question cigar makers get asked because it determines how much of the process that cigar maker owns. I'm going to use one cigar maker just as an example, and that is the Plasencia family, a 5th generation cigar making family that is fully vertically integrated, just meaning that they own every part of the process of crafting a cigar. And when I say that, I mean field, farm, factory, a family name, and a box factory, by the way. The challenge with starting a brand new brand, especially if you've got no skin in the game in cigars, is that you end up outsourcing every single one of those things, which means they cost more to do substantially. And a lot of new brand owners find themselves making cigars in the most expensive way possible. Now, that being said, I have some friends who are cigar brand owners who have done a spectacular job, and they're really not that vertically integrated. But for each and every one of them, it was like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back process where you learn by pain and expensive mistakes. It's something that not even everybody recovers from. In fact, one thing that I have learned in the cigar world is that the average shelf life of a brand new cigar brand is relatively short. And part of it is that you just don't know what you don't know. And so, and I've heard this said from my most reliable source is cigar makers themselves. And that is the average shelf life of a cigar brand in the cigar industry is less than 2 years. That's how long they sort of make it before folding up shop and walking away. Even these days, the premium cigar world is more saturated than it's ever been. I say this a lot. We're in the craft beer era of premium cigars. In the same way that craft beer industry's got all of these little micro breweries out there, and you can go into like a pub or something like that and see 50 different taps lined up and all the different beers that there are. The cigar industry has more brands and more blends out there today than we have in 100 years. And that's pretty exceptional because everybody's fighting for a little bit of that market share. And when you end up in that pool with everybody else, if you don't know what you don't know, then you might end up falling short or falling behind of those who have at least got an idea or a good mentor. And so without this idea of somebody who can coach you along and help you avoid some of the important pitfalls, especially of crafting a very good product, it's something that's very dangerous to just jump into. The next big red flag has to do with your brand's name or possibly your blend's name. I have heard more people than I can count sit down and say to me things like, oh yeah, man, I really want to start a cigar brand. I got a great name for it. I'm going to call it the Black Rat Dirt Dragon. And it's going to be so cool and everybody's going to love it. Here's what you need to understand about the cigar world. The people who work in this industry are fiercely protective of their intellectual property, their trade names, their copyrights. It is by far the most important thing to them. And when they've got a good name, they will protect it with lawyers. And for a new upstarting brand, that's a problem because there's so many trade names out there that have already been stamped on, already been taken, that if you step on one, you're going to find out the legal way that you've done something wrong. And this is something that I've seen again and again and again that pops up even with experienced cigar brand owners. They come out with a great cigar, they put something together that they really believe is going to work, and boom, cease and desist. You better stop that right now because you just stepped on someone else's toes. And is exceedingly more expensive, especially if you've already stamped your brand name on a bunch of boxes or printed off like 50 or 100,000 cigar rings. But there are companies who protect individual words that they have trademarked for their different cigar names. And there are certain words that if you put them anywhere in the name of a cigar, you will get a letter from somebody else. I know what a few of them are, but I don't even know what all of them are. And I've been doing this for like a decade. I have seen so many horror stories. So at this point, you don't know what you don't know, and somebody's already sued you for your trade name. The next big red flag is that if you want to start a cigar brand, the word logistics is going to be written on your tombstone, I promise. The date you were born, the date sometime near in the future when you cease to be, and killed by logistics alone. Because in the world of cigars, logistics are one of the craziest things I've ever seen. There's nothing I've experienced in my life that's closer to a legitimate episode of The Twilight Zone than the logistics of making cigars. And this seems to be something that's pretty much unanimously the case from cigar maker to cigar maker. Some of the best stories I've heard are from some of the most well-known cigar makers out there of just weird stuff that's happened that completely throws everything off track. Remember, starting a cigar brand will almost definitely involve doing international business with large minimum order quantities, talking about large dollar amounts where the little details are really important. And you're doing these things over international borders, probably through a language barrier. Even for the cigar makers who traditionally travel to the country like Nicaragua or Honduras or the Dominican Republic, colossal issues pop up with logistics. Hell, just in the last 4 years, we've seen a worldwide craze that has caused the amount of shipping to go from like a container that you put the cigars in to ship them or fly them over the border. Those went from like $2,000 or $3,000 to $20,000 and then back down. But not back down to $2,000 or $3,000. The prices of things have been jumping all over the place. And this makes logistics very difficult to do, on top of the fact that in the midst of your international different countries and your language barrier, there's also a huge cultural divide between the United States of America and Latin America, where things are just a lot more laid back. These days, I would say it this way. If a cigar maker called me and told me that they could ship me cigars on a specific date, which by the way, they're very careful not to do, and I'm grateful for that. Because if they said, Tim, I can have some cigars to you on February 6th, I usually know that February 6th is the only day that I should not expect to see cigars. Now that being said, the cigar makers do a great job and they're passionate about their work. Cigar factories are truly an amazing place to do an amazing job. But when the clock is running and the bank account is rolling back home, it can be hard to sort of work those things into a cash flow. I've got to tell you, I have seen projects from prominent large, multi-generational cigar families be held up because of packaging alone. It's just one small piece of logistics that you could never count on. These are highly successful, very focused, goal-oriented people who a project is delayed for 6 months because the boxes didn't come out right and they have to remake all of them, or because a certain tobacco for the project isn't available, or because the cigar ring printer is backed up by months, or the cigar ring printer called them and said, I know you ordered 100,000 cigar rings, but we've got enough paper to make 20,000 of these, so we'll send you that and the rest of the rings we can get you in a year. This is the kind of stuff that I hear cigar makers talk about and have even experienced some of it myself. And let's just give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that you do know what you don't know. You can work in the cigar industry and account for the parts of the process you don't own. You can create a good cigar that is at a reasonable price because you know a guy. That's pretty good. And let's just say that you do have a rock star trade name, a cigar name that nobody else has thought of, and it's a winner, and you got it. Congratulations. And for some reason, you experience logistical success. You've done it. You still got to deal with regulations and taxes, my friend. The cigar industry is, if anything, a spider web of regulations and taxes. And this depends really on where you live. And I'm not talking about federal taxes. I'm not talking about federal regulations, and my gosh, there are plenty of them. If you ever lived through the deeming rule of 2016 stuff, you know that the whole cigar industry was terrified. But not for a very long time, only for 5 years did we live in horror that our whole industry would be crushed by regulations. It's on the city, county, and state levels that things like regulations and taxes produce huge outcomes. Being a cigar maker registered in one state is completely different than being a cigar maker registered in another state, which is, by the way, a part of the reason a lot of cigar makers are in Florida, and some other ones are in Texas, and a couple of other places, and not very many. But the truth is, there's always some new thing coming down the pipelines that cigar makers are trying to duck and dodge and weave and dip, duck, dive, dodge, whatever the 5 Ds are. They're doing all of those things all the time because something new is always around the corner. There's always some bill going before Congress that would smush our industry flat. And then Cigar Rights of America rolls in and they're like, lawsuits and lawsuits. And it goes on for a long time. There's always something exciting to follow. That's the good news. But even then, if you didn't have to worry about rules and regulations in America, you definitely have to worry about them in Latin American countries. Even just within the last couple of years, little regulations, little moves within Latin American countries have made crafting a blend and creating a brand name and creating a new cigar more expensive, more complicated, and more wrapped in red tape than it ever has before. And then there is the king of all red flags, the ultimate cigar maker Achilles heel, the thing I've seen take down more brands than any one thing. And that is, how in the hell are you going to grow a brand? How are you going to talk? How are you going to get the name out there for that brand? See, it's something people don't think about when they get into the cigar industry. But it's something that people don't even think about once they're in the cigar industry. I have met more brand owners than not who come along with no significant plan for building their brand. They've gone through and done all of the things that I've talked about. They've managed all of these red flags, and tenuously so. But then when it comes to saying, like, how are you going to get your cigars out there into the world? They don't really have a good plan. You talk to them about things that are a good idea for sort of a, strategy for getting people to know about your cigars. And even then they're like, oh yeah, I should really be doing that. I can't tell you how many cigar makers these are serious people with brands that have been around for a while. They're like, yeah, I got to get around to doing that. Oh, really? Get around to growing your brand? Sure, maybe that should be, the first thing that you think about. When it comes to any industry and any business in the world, creating market drive for a brand is the key thing. More companies go out of business because of bad marketing and bad growth than anything else. This is something that's absolutely colossally critical. And when there's so many other moving parts to doing something like starting a business, and this becomes the afterthought, you're in severe danger. It should be a part of the business plan. It should be a thought up front. At least should be a plan there. Otherwise, your only plan is to fail. And at the end of the day, those aren't even all of the red flags. They're just the 5 that horrify me the most. And I'll say this. It is a minefield out there in the cigar world, and a pretty saturated one. There's lots of people walking around this minefield these days. So considering to do something like this is going to take a lot of thought, a lot of careful, considerate thought, and probably a little bit of insanity. If you're at least half crazy, maybe you got half a shot. But the truth is, in the world of cigars, these days, it's about passion. The people who do it because no one can tell them not to. Those are the guys that typically jump in with both feet, and even then only some of them succeed. There's absolutely no guarantees out there. This is something I have a little bit of experience in. A lot of my friends have a profound amount of experience in it, and even then there are still new potholes to discover and fall squarely into. And so I'll ask you again, is this something you thought about? Were you thinking about it at the beginning of the video and now you're like, no, that's okay. I think I'll go open like a used sports equipment store or something like that. Put that down in the comments below and let me know. And of course, get a ton more out of this video when you join the community on Cigars Daily Plus or check this video out on Rumble. Thank you all so much for watching. This is Tim signing off for Cigars Daily, and I will see you in the comments.